Picture this, it's 1763, and Great Britain stands as the absolute most powerful empire the world has ever seen. Their military had just completely crushed the French and Spanish in a sprawling global conflict, stretching all the way from the untamed forests of North America down to the shores of India. On paper, it was a moment of absolute, total triumph. Yet, beneath all those grand celebrations, a massive, invisible pressure was silently building. Welcome to This Explainer. What we're about to explore is the dark, true story of a catastrophic fracture. We're going to see exactly how a golden age shattered completely from the inside out.
Okay, let's dive into this. The timeline of this collapse is just staggering. We are literally looking at a ticking clock. Because for the 2 million subjects living in the 13 American colonies, being British was the ultimate badge of pride. I mean, they raised their glasses in local taverns to toast King George III, and they looked eagerly toward this horizon of limitless Western expansion. So how does an entire population of fiercely loyal citizens transform into a heavily armed rebellion in less than 36 months?
Well, the answer actually begins in the shadows of their victory. You see, the triumph over the French and Spanish was absolute, for sure, but it came with a terrifying hidden cost. To put this into perspective, in today's money, the debt from that global war was in the hundreds of billions. The British treasury was literally empty. And so, in the quiet, dimly lit offices of London, ministers started making cold, logical decisions to fix their balance sheet. They had absolutely no idea they were lighting a fuse. To really understand the shock of what happens next, we have to look at how life actually worked over in the colonies. For 70 years, the American colonists had lived under a policy known as salutary neglect. Basically, London had essentially left them alone. They were allowed to run their own local governments, build their own communities, and trade however they pleased. They were incredibly proud to be British subjects precisely because of this freedom. They were completely unaware that the end of the global war was going to change the rules of the empire overnight. And this brilliantly illustrates the rapid, suffocating escalation that followed. It's a tightening noose of legislation. From the Proclamation Line in late 1763 to the Sugar Act just months later, plunging directly into the explosive Stamp Act of 1765. It's a stunning cascade of events, dragging an entire continent from peaceful prosperity to the absolute brink of war in mere months. Part 1. The Invisible Border. Let's look at October 1763. The very first shock to the American colonies actually wasn't an attack at all. It was a simple line, drawn on a map by a distant monarch. In October 1763, King George III issued a royal proclamation, drawing an invisible border right along the crest of the Appalachian Mountains. Colonists were strictly forbidden from settling anywhere to the west. The goal here was to prevent highly expensive new conflicts with Native American tribes, whose leaders, like Chief Pontiac, were already violently resisting this expansion. To really grasp this fracture, we have to look impartially at both sides. To the ministers sitting safely in London, this was simple, cold, strategic logic. Separate the colonists and the native tribes, keep the peace, and save money. But to the American pioneers, especially the veterans who had literally just shed their blood to win that exact land from the French, it was a visceral, devastating betrayal. Their hard-won future was being locked away by a distant king who couldn't possibly understand their sacrifice.
Part 2. The Cost of Empire. It's time to balance the books. While the colonies were still reeling from that invisible border, a new figure stepped into the shadows of London's financial offices, a man of numbers named George Grenville. Grenville looked across the Atlantic and saw a massive missed opportunity for revenue. The stark reality on the balance sheet was undeniable. The average English citizen was paying 50 times more in taxes than an American colonist. Armed with pure calculated logic, Grenville decided it was finally time for the Americans to pay for the expensive British army stationed on their soil.
So in 1764, Grenville pushed through the Sugar Act. Now, what's really interesting about this is that on the surface, it sounded like a simple tax on molasses. But beneath the numbers lay a fundamental, genuinely terrifying shift in how the law was going to be enforced across the ocean.
To enforce this revenue, London decided to bypass the colonial legal system entirely. Accused smugglers would no longer face a jury of their peers. Instead, they were hauled before military judges and admiralty courts, where they were often considered guilty until proven innocent. A really dark realization began to wash over the colonists. Their ancient rights as Englishmen, things like fair trials and consent to laws, were being systematically dismantled from 3,000 miles away. Part 3. The Stamp Act Spark. The year is 1765.
The true explosion, the absolute spark that set the continent on fire, arrived a year later. The Stamp Act wasn't some hidden duty on ocean trade. No, it was an inescapable, direct tax on daily life. Every legal document, every newspaper, every deck of playing cards, even a college diploma had to carry a government-issued stamp. In a massive, frankly unbelievable miscalculation, London didn't just tax the colonies. They directly antagonized the most articulate, influential people in society: the lawyers, the printers, and the merchants.
Almost overnight, all that scattered frustration found a unified voice, and a rallying cry that would literally echo through history. No taxation without representation. It was an argument of profound, razor-sharp logic. If the colonists did not have a physical seat in the British Parliament across the ocean, then that Parliament had absolutely no legal or moral right to reach into their pockets, period.
Part 4. Rebellion in the Shadows. It's time to take it to the streets.
Those logical debates in the halls of Parliament were about to be met by something much, much darker. The British fully expected grumbling, maybe some polite petitions. They absolutely did not expect what happened in the Virginia House of Burgesses. A fiery young lawyer named Patrick Henry delivered a speech so radically defiant that shocked members of the chamber literally shouted treason as he spoke. Henry brazenly suggested that only Virginians had the power to tax Virginia.
Let's move to the streets and see how this builds, because words quickly mutated into violent action. Up in Boston, a secret group calling themselves the Sons of Liberty began to operate in the shadows, and they moved far beyond writing pamphlets. They took to the dark streets, burning effigies of tax collectors under towering liberty trees. They literally dismantled the homes of royal officials, piece by piece. By the time the physical stamps actually arrived in America, the tax was completely dead on arrival. No one was left brave enough to distribute them.
Part 5. The Ominous Peace. The 1766 Retreat. The sheer scale of the resistance shocked the empire to its absolute core. Facing an unenforceable law and an armed populace, the British government was forced into a sudden, humiliating retreat. They repealed the Stamp Act. All across the colonies, bonfires were lit and church bells rang out in what felt like a miraculous victory. But as the smoke from those celebration fires slowly cleared, a final chilling document arrived from London. Along with the repeal, Parliament had quietly passed the Declaratory Act.
The text of this act stated, in no uncertain terms, that Britain held total, absolute authority over the American colonies, in all cases whatsoever. It was a heavy, ominous assertion of ultimate power. Parliament was basically saying, we are backing down today, but make no mistake, we own you completely.
So the immediate crisis of 1765 had been weathered. The riots stopped, the effigies were put away, but the fundamental question of who truly owned America remained entirely unanswered. The colonists had looked across the dark ocean and realized for the very first time that the mother country they had once proudly loved had become a cold, calculating stranger. The invisible seeds of a brand new nation had been planted, not on a blood-soaked battlefield, but quietly, deep in the hearts of the people.
The world hadn't turned upside down just yet, but the fuse was lit, and the ultimate question now hung heavily in the air, just waiting for an answer. What was their liberty truly worth? Would they bow to the Declaratory Act, or would they finish what they started in the shadows of the Liberty Tree?